Thank you. This is Ken, LA7GIA. Thank you very much for inviting me to do this presentation. I'm gonna tell a little bit about my trip to Somalia last year in September. Gonna talk a little bit about Somalia, talk about the equipment, antenna layout, talk about the preparations I did with respect to the equipment planning, the license visa, all the local permits you need to get to do the transmission, show you some photos, talk about the DXpedition, what happened during the DXpedition, how a sort of a day during the expedition is. Also, just mention a few other things there. What we see here is the flag of the Puntland, which is autonomous part of Somalia. Somalia is actually divided in three parts. It's Somalia in the southern part of the state, and then you have the Puntland, which is a semi-autonomous part of the Somalia, and then you have Somaliland, which is they actually declared independence in 1990, but it's not recognized by any states in the world actually. So there is actually ongoing conflict between Somaliland and Puntland and between Somaliland and Somalia. The reason actually why I wanted to go to Somalia in September 2019 as 6O7O was I was there in 2018 with my friend Adrian, Kilo Oscar 8 Sierra Charlie Alpha, but I felt that we did not succeed on the low bands due to a lot of difficulties we had with the hotel manager and sort of events which happened down there. So I wanted to go back as a single operator. Still, it's when I was there in 2019, it was ranked pretty high up on the low band, 22 worldwide on 160 meter, 24 on 80 meter, and 59 on worldwide all modes, taken from the club log most wanted. I wanted to do a single up DXpedition due to the flights going to Somalia, which is not that frequent. I had to do a 12 days trip. As mentioned, it's divided in three parts. This makes it a little bit difficult when it's come to licensing because the federal license they issue in Mogadishu is not recognized by Puntland and Somaliland. In the same way, if you go to Somaliland, you cannot use a federal license. And if you go to Puntland, you have to get a license for the local authorities. Basically, some years ago, I discussed this license policy with the government in Mogadishu, but they can issue a license, but they really don't want to do it because of all the security issues in Mogadishu. They really don't want to sort of bring tourists to Mogadishu to do radio transmission. They rather want to sort of invite tourists later on when the conditions are better. So I also tried to get a license in Somaliland, which is more quiet part actually. Hargeisa, the capital of Somaliland, is considered a relative safe place to go, but they really did not want to issue a license. They have concerns about all this kind of transmission we do, and they have issues with all media and TV stations and radio stations. So they really didn't want to issue a license. However, Puntland is a very friendly part, and I got to know a local inhabitant there, and he's very friendly and very helpful. Actually, he had been living in Scandinavia for a few years and also UK, so he really sort of understood how we were thinking. So he assisted us in all this license stuff we had to sort out. So yeah, wasn't a problem getting a license in Puntland, and it's also considered a sort of stable part. There are not that many incidents in Puntland as compared to Somalia. When I was there with Adrian in 2018, there was actually a heavy clash between the Puntland military forces and Somaliland, just 40 miles away on the border, on the disputed zone between those two parts of Somalia. There was a big clash, and so things happen as well. We have ISIL and Al-Shabaab, the terrorists. They move around in Puntland, and yeah, roadside bombs are quite common. Also, assassinations happens frequently in Puntland, Somalia. So this is kind of things you have to consider when going to Somalia. That's why being advised by my local contact person that Garowe, the capital in Puntland, was the most safe place to go to. He really advised me not to go to other places like Galkayo, which is not a good place, and also Bosaso. So in those cities there are a lot more trouble. So been in Garowe twice, and it's I would say it's it's a place you can actually sort of go to if you want to go on a DXpedition to Somalia. Going on such a trip, even like a single operator, I always do a lot of planning upfront, and also bring a lot of equipment with me. On this trip, I had 102 kilos. I'm not sure what that's in pounds, but it's kilos. And after that, it was 100 kilo of equipment and not much personal stuff. Only 2.5 kilos. Had about 1,300 meters of wires and 370 meter of coax cable. I always have my K3 with me. This was an upgraded K3 with new 5-pole filters, 200 hertz filters, really good filters, and which you really need when you go on the expeditions, and of course when you do contesting. I also have a KX3 which I use as a backup radio. I have my Yuma amplifier. It's 1 kilowatt. It's only about, I think, about 10 pounds, so it's quite lightweight, and I can take both the K3, the KX3, and the Yuma on carry-on luggage on aircraft. That's a really nice thing. Also bring a dual power supply. I have my antenna farm. It's my mostly mini 32A beam, which is a 2-element 20-15 10 meter, and it's a dipole on 17 and 12 meter. And when I get this beam high up, like 15, 20, 25 meter, it has shown that it's a really good antenna, even though it's it's only 500 watt on CW and 1000 watt on sideband, but it's really good performance of this small beam when I get the height. On this trip, I also used a top-loaded vertical 22 meter height of the wire, 25 radials, and about 20-25 meter lengths. Had a full-size 80 meter vertical, full-size 40 meter. On 30 meter, it was dipole inverted V. Always bring a lot of backup wire with me, because I know that there are always a failure of something, or some luggage might be missing. So always take a lot of care when packing the bag. So making sure that backup spare parts are in different luggage. Also put some effort into the receiving antennas. Had a 230 meter beverage to Europe and North America, and also went to Japan. Also bring backup receiving antennas, and don't forget the common mode chokes. That's very important for the receiving antennas. Also usually bring with me a QRM eliminator that can sort of assist me during if there is local noise sources, which happen quite frequently in Africa. I bring some aluminium mast and also spider poles, some light weight wires, and so on. A lot of coax. Quite extensive when you actually sum all this together. This is a photo of the radial system, the lightweight wire I bought from DL Wire in Germany. I think this 230 meter beverage is, if I remember, it's not more than I think 1 pound weight. It's not much at all. And the coax I have, lightweight coax, doesn't weigh much. The receiving coax is actually a little bit heavier. It's a RG6 75 ohm coax. And when you add all this up together, it's for a single up trip like this, it's quite easily 100 kilos, and that makes it also difficult to go on those cheapest flights, economy flights. You can usually not bring more than 20-25 kilos in Europe. So that's usually I would sort of buy a more expensive ticket just so that I can be allowed to bring more luggage with me. Also do a lot of testing upfront. Usually test all the equipment before I go. This is my backyard, just outside the house here. I think that is important just to do a full testing of the equipment. Then you sort of familiarize with the equipment, and then of course the installation when you get down to Somalia and other places is much quicker. For the beam, I usually don't use more than 30-45 minutes to do the installation. It's a very quick installation when we have done it so many times. This is just a photo from my shack, which I'm sitting in right now. Always during the expeditions like this, there is I used to put all the stuff inside here, the antennas, all the wires and cables and so on. So it's it's a nice place to have the opportunity to do all the planning and preparation for the expeditions. I also like to spend time on antenna simulation just because I think it's fun. I can do sort of try to model the exact antenna I will put up. Like in Somalia, I would try to just make a simple model of this and see. You can sort of simulate impact of removing the radial systems and so on. Quite fun to actually do. And in addition, I also like the WUA-CAP propagation site. That's really excellent tool, combining that with actually decision on what antenna you will bring with you. For instance, I would do simulations trying to determine if I should bring a vertical for 30 meter or if I should bring a dipole for 30 meter. And by sort of doing this kind of analysis, you can get a feeling for what antenna will be the best performer to certain locations in the world. So yeah, usually if you get the dipole inverted V high up, then it's a better performer than the vertical, of course. And for this, like in Somalia here, I could have the inverted V of 18 meter and then 15-18 meter, and then it was a much better performance than on that than compared to the vertical. I did not put up a dipole for the 40 meter because the height you could get with the dipole was not that good. So the simulations show that I should put up a vertical, and that was a really good decision. I was really satisfied with this simple wire antenna on 40 meter. Really had a good signal into the United States on that band. As mentioned, used top loaded vertical and so on. Beam on 2-element beam on 20 meter. I think kind of like the 2-element beam. It's the best gain for compared to 3-element. Will be much more heavy. It will be much more unstable mechanically. It's much more difficult to keep a 3-element beam up in the air compared to 2-element. So I really like the performance for this 2-element beam. You get the nice gain and so on. Dipole, I have this is also 500 watt dipole, which is on the beam, but I usually bring with me wire dipoles so I can run 1 kilowatt on them as a backup. Mention a little bit about the planning for all the permits you need. My local contact person, he used to work in the ministry in Puntland, so I sort of managed to get an official invitation from the ministry to come there, and this can be quite useful because this letter of invitation you can use if you have to go through customs and during security checks, during road checks, and so on. Always nice to sort of bring this piece of paper with you. And yeah, the license, actually it's a quite simple application procedure. You just fill in an email, and they will send you this template, and you have to fill in the name, and kind of you have to provide them with a passport and so on. And the license fee is $500, and that's it's kind of expensive maybe, but at the same time you really don't have a choice. For the first, when I was there in 2018, they said they didn't really offer a license. They had this commercial license, but that's not what we wanted, and I didn't want that in 2019 either, because a commercial license is not valid for us. So we had a discussion with them, and I tried to explain them about amateur radio. So they agreed they could issue an amateur radio application and a license, but they first wanted $3,000 for 5 years license. But I tried to explain I was only going to stay there for a few weeks, so asked for a 14 days license, but they said I could get 1 year license, and that's what I got. So, but I managed to get the price down to 500, but they were quite persistent on that. So yeah, I don't think it's possible to get it any more cheaper than that. I did try to translate this Somali language. I don't recall everything, but it's basically, it says that you should sort of adhere to the regulations, and only do amateur radio, not do anything else. Yeah, Somalia can be a complicated project because it's not as accessible as other African countries. For instance, when you go to Mogadishu, for instance, you can get the visa at the airport, but if you go to Puntland, you cannot get the visa when you cannot apply for a visa when you arrive in Puntland. You have to fix the visa upfront, and that's what my local contact did for me. He sorted out this visa, and to get the visa you need to have a recommendation from a private company or from a government company. So he assisted me with this recommendation and letter of invitation, and I don't think I paid more than maybe $100 for this visa. And when I arrived in Puntland, the visa was at the airport, so it was very convenient. He also fixed the license, as mentioned. Without him, it would have been sort of impossible to actually go there. And not only did he fix the visa and the license for me, but in addition, he was very important when it comes to selecting the QTH, because I would say it's almost impossible to do a booking of a hotel in Puntland. There is no website you can sort of go into and book a room. So you need to have a local contact to sort out this. Because I had this special requirement, with the special need for antennas and so on, all things get more complicated. In 2018, the hotel manager there, he really tried to do what he could to get us into trouble, because he didn't like the antenna. So when I wanted to go there in 2000, I put a lot more effort into all the upfront planning of the QTH, and this local contact person, he actually did 3 site visits to Garova. The first visit, probably 6 months in advance, he went there, he checked the sites, he took a lot of photos, he took videos, and he provided me with a lot of photos and information of the site, which I had to review. And then we agreed on a hotel, and he went to the hotel manager and he discussed the project and convinced him that that this wasn't a problem for him to sort of allow me as a guest. So after the first site visit, we sort of had agreed on a hotel, and the second visit was to sort of get all the permits we needed, because this property wasn't that big, so I needed to use the neighboring property, and he needed to get a permit from the neighbor to use that without any fee, and he succeeded to get that permit from the neighboring owner, the landowner. In addition, as is seen on this photo, because the beverage setup was quite a distance away from the hotel, I wanted to have a permit from the local government actually to dig a ditch to put the coax cable in. So he sort of dealt with the local government, and he had approval from them that we could actually cross a public road and dig the coax down there. And so that was a very important permit he provided me with. He also secured all the transport, and advice is to sort of use a security company. You get the armed car, and you get armed soldiers which protect you from the airport and drive you to the hotel. It's a professional security company. They have contact with the government and the intelligence agencies. So if there is any sort of issue or situation in Puntland, they will be aware of this, because they sort of take full responsibility for the assessment of the security, and they can also stop the transport if needed. So it feels a lot more safer to spend $500 on this transport from the airport to the hotel. This local contact person also made an agreement with local handcrafters to assist me during the installation, because sometimes it can be a little bit difficult when you're single operators and doing all the installation. So this is when I arrived in the hotel, and there actually they had dig this for me, and it was all well prepared when I arrived. So the only thing I could had to do was actually just to put the coax down in the ditch here, and they also, when I arrived, they also started to dig the ditch crossing the public road. So yeah, it was really nice done. This is part of the beverage installation, so really put some effort into this to try to find a good location, and I think I had to run the coax for about maybe 800-900 feet, maybe 900 feet. I think the coax was run through the streets, crossing the public street, and into a river. And of course, I checked this. It was actually in the river, but I checked with my local contact person if there was any water in the river. But he said in September there isn't any water, and actually in Puntland there is actually not much rain. I think he said that it's rain about between 2-3 days each year. So usually there is this river is quite dry. And but you see here it's quite rocky. It made it a little bit difficult to do a proper installation of this beverage, because it was really hard to put these the ground stakes into the ground. Was almost impossible. I could not get this the ground roads needed more than maybe 30 centimeter down. So I think that had a sort of impact on the beverage performance. But it's what you get. It's not easy to change the soil conditions. Again, you see here is sort of this lightweight, very thin DL wire from Germany. It's a really nice wire. It's very strong, so it's very difficult to break it. You cannot break it by hands, for instance. You need to have you need to have a really sharp equipment to cut it. Let me see. Yeah, this is two of my assistants. They only spoke Somali language, and they didn't speak English at all. So we had a kind of communication problem. But yeah, it wasn't easy to sort of explain and what they were going to assist me with. But yeah, in a way we managed, and they were quite helpful all the time, and really nice to have more than two hands doing the installation. In the background here is the beam, and we see parts of Garove city. I don't think it's a very large city. I think I've heard around 100,000 people in this city. Really nice and quiet city, but there is a mosque just behind the hotel. So yeah, there used to be some sound from that mosque from time to time, and actually I really liked listening to this mosque, and you could see people gathering around the mosque, and it was really, especially during nights, really nice to get up on the roof and listen. Actually, a moment, a memory I will remember from these trips to Somalia. This is also a view of. You can see Garo over here. I think this is more towards South America. It's very flat, so it's actually excellent takeoff when you get these antennas a little bit high up. This is the spider pole, and the vertical antenna wires sloping down. Here is the 160 meter and 80 meter wires sloping down. And the first day I did the installation, I think I spent 5 hours installing this pole with the wires and the radial system, including the beam. Also the beverage installations, all was completed during 5 hours, and all that also included installation of the shack and the radio and so on. Here is a view from the neighboring property, which my local contact person provided with access to. It was just a big site. It wasn't in use, and that's why it was easy to get the permission to use it. Here is the red, is the radial wires, and we can just see the sloping wires from the spider pole. So the spider pole was about 11-12 meters tall, and this building I think it was about 12 meters tall. So yeah, it was quite easy to just slope the wires down. And when it comes to 160, I'm really a fan of a top-loaded vertical. I think that's the best performance you can get of a vertical. And I also usually use a hairpin match to match it. Also see the beam here on the top, and on the right side, upper right side was my room. So quite convenient to just bring the coax into the room. And usually it isn't a problem to run the coax into the hotel rooms in Africa. Usually that's no issue. If there is any issue, they will sort of fix it. So never had any problems getting coax into the room. This is the feed point. This property was actually, there was a lot of garbage on this property, and that's a general problem in Puntland, Somalia. There is no infrastructure for collecting garbage, so there is garbage all over the place. We can see some photos later on, but they just drop the garbage on the road. So that's a pity, but that's how it is. I had to sort of because the wire length wasn't easy to adjust the wire length. So that's why the radials go 1.5 meter up on the wall here. Actually, the local, they thought it was a camera. If you look at this this feed point, the box, the black circle, they thought it was a camera. So it's quite funny. What we see here is the backup dipole. It's a 20 and 17 meter wire dipole, just homemade. I used to call it my African dipole. I have had this dipole with me on all the trips, also when I was in Jan last year. So it's a really good performance for this this dipole, and I think it's very convenient to just bring this with me. And usually when I do the installation of the beam and so on, I still always spend 5-10 minutes extra just to put up a backup antenna, so I have it ready in case there is something happening with the beam, because I know from time to time failures happen. Yeah, the noise level wasn't that bad actually. S2, it could increase to S5, S1 to maybe S3, 4 on 80 meter, but 160 was of course more noise, but still manageable. What I really struggled with was the propagation. The propagation was on this trip was probably the most difficult propagation I have experienced on any of the expeditions I've been on. It was really bad propagation. So it's not much you can do when the propagation is bad, but that's how it is. This is the mostly mini beam. I think it was a really nice view. Yeah, this is just another photo of the hotel. In the beginning, when I arrived in a hotel, I was a little bit curious about the hotel manager, but when I arrived, because the previous hotel manager in 2018, he was really trying to make problems for us. But this hotel manager, when I arrived, he said, he just told me, I don't care what you do, you can do whatever you want. He didn't care. I can put the wires wherever I wanted. I could put the coax. He really didn't care. He was just happy to have actually some guests. The first few days, the hotel was actually packed with people, but after a few days, all the people left, and I was alone in this hotel. So I had all the hotel for myself, and I didn't have to worry about anything really. So yeah, it was a nice place to stay. They had they had actually good food, and yeah, really took care of me. They asked me what kind of food I wanted, if I wanted something to drink, and so on. Of course, in Somalia there is no alcohol, so there was no beer. But other than that, they sort of provided me with the food I wanted. When it comes to meat, there is, for instance, not too much to choose between. It's usually between goat or chicken. So it's chicken and pasta or some kind of goat meat. And the goat meat is really nice meat. I really like it. This is just a photo from the low band night shift. Because you're a single operator, you have to do the day shift and you have to do the night shift, and there is no change of operator. So of course, you can be quite tired at the end of the night shift. But on this trip, I really wanted to focus on the low band. I really didn't care about the 20, 17 meter, 15 meter. I wanted to go there to do 160, 80, 40, and 30 meter. So that was the priority. So I set up the schedule, which I will show you later on, that this was the focus. So I would stay on 160 or 80, even though the conditions was not good. I would be on the band and listen for signals and transmit, no matter how bad it was. It was just a decision I had taken upfront that I should focus on the low band. I was going to show you a clip from the pilot, but I don't think the audio function here, so we just skip this one. But this is a photo of the shack. Usually, what you get is a very small table, and you have to put all your stuff on this small table: the amplifier and the radio, and I use this Surface Pro computer, which has a sort of limited interface, but it still works quite well. And yeah, usually happy with this setup. The K3 with all the filters is really good performer with a 200 hertz filter. Also like the Yuma 1 kilowatt, 5.5 kilo or 10 pound is a good performer. And the problem with the Yuma is that you sort of need resonant antennas. You need to get the low resonance, maybe 1.2 to 1.7. Yeah. In this case, I had a little bit of a high SWR on one antenna, so then you just have to reduce the power around. Usually, even though this could output about 800, 1 kilowatt, I would usually maybe just run it at 600, 700. I quite rarely would uh, uh, run it on 1 kilo amp, except I did it on 40 meter to working the state side, because I had SWR on 1.0 on that band, and I sort of felt I needed the power to work United States, and that's the only band I really put out full power. I had a damage on a muscle beam after 1 week, and yeah, you just notice you run the pilot up, and then suddenly there is a high SWR, and you know that there is an issue, and you just have to stop the pilot up and run up and see what it is. I was running 20 meter, and I just swapped to the backup dipole, so I was just QRX for a few minutes actually, and then the next day I had actually a spare part, this plastic tube. I had actually a spare part, so I was managed to fix it the next day actually. So yeah, luckily bringing spare part is essential when you go to Africa. There you cannot sort of go and buy spare parts if you need it. So I always bring a lot of spare parts with me, and components which I know is difficult to get hold of. Yeah, this is just another photo of the backup dipole. You should just connect it to whatever is available here. I could have access to the whole roof. I could do whatever I want, and due to the photos I had been provided upfront, I had already done the planning of how I would like to do the installation, and these photos was very useful because it saves you a lot of time. When you come here on the roof, you have already seen how it looks like. You have already thought through all the different aspects of an installation, and it just makes it so much more convenient when you have done a proper planning up front. This is just a photo of the inverted V, very simple, but it worked quite well, even though the apex wasn't that high. Really good performance on 30 meter, and was a band which was some evenings really good conditions on that band. 30 meter is a band I really enjoy. I did have some problems with the beverage. There was one night I thought it was really bad propagation. There wasn't much signals on the beverage, and I had a little bit noise on the vertical, so it wasn't easy to do the transmission. And yeah, next morning I woke up and I went out. Always when I go outside a hotel property, here is the gate, I always have an armed guard together with me, and that's needed. I mean, you can of course walk without the armed guard, but it's just a risk if you do it. And so always when I left the hotel property for doing any kind of inspection, I would need to wait for the armed guard to be ready. And I had a problem here, and we went to see the beverage, and then they explained me that something had happened with the wire, and they didn't want to wake me up because they thought I was sleeping during night. And then we had a long discussion, and I tried to explain them that if anything happened with these wires, they should just call me immediately, because I was definitely not sleeping during the night. So yeah, we had a quite good conversation on that. I try to sort of explain what I do, and they are always very interested in the kind of radio stuff, but they really, of course, really don't understand it, what it's all about. So, but yeah, we always, with these guards and the people who assist me, always have a very good relationship with them, and have made many friends around Africa in all the countries I've been to. So even today, I used to keep in contact with them, and yeah, we keep in contact regularly. So that's quite good. This wire was damaged, but it was actually just in the beverage box, so it's quite easy to fix it. So it wasn't a severe failure. I also had a failure on the beverage a few days later on. That was some school children that had played with the beverage wire. So, but that's kind of things that happen. In Somalia, you will experience a quite windy and difficult condition. There is a steady wind coming in during the afternoons, and this it isn't really a problem for the spider fowl, but it just sometimes it can look bad, but because you start worrying about this heavy wind. And actually it fell down once, but that was due to the clamping. I hadn't clamped it properly, so that was actually my own fault, and that was just a lesson learned. As mentioned, food was a nice food, but wasn't that much to choose between: chicken and pasta or goat meal. This is the armor guard. I had a beverage first installed here, but we had to lower it, so it's actually, in the end, it was a beverage on ground. And this guard did a really good job. He was guarding this 24/7. There were two soldiers guarding this, 12 hours shift each. And the reason for hiring a guard to do this was, of course, because when I was there in 2018, this beverage we had was stolen, and without the guard, it would have been impossible to have a receiving antenna. So this guard, he actually watched after the coax cable and the beverage, and if a lot of people used to walk across this river to go to a factory, and he would make sure that they didn't, tramp on this or damage the coax and the wire. So without this guard, it wouldn't have been impossible to have a receiving antenna. And during the day shift, I used to sit under this tree, and we also see some garbage here. Also in this picture is the crossing of the public road, and a lot of garbage around here, and it wasn't easy to dig this, but we managed to do it, to get it down about 2-3 inches deep, not more than that. A few more slides. This is just a computer setup I use. For the expeditions, I actually used this new club log feature. So you can see the live QSOs, and it was very useful for me as an operator to see these pictures, because I could actually see the propagation. I could see the propagation from Somalia going into Europe, for instance, and it was very useful to see how far my signal extended into Europe. Also, very important, into the US. I could see how my signals extended into the East Coast, coming into the Midwest, and so on. So yeah, very useful tool for me. Always in the lower right, I always have sort of sunrise window up, and that's always nice to keep track of. I did have some challenges. As mentioned, there was an error message on a K3 sub receiver. I could not key the rig, and of course, if you're a CW operator, it wasn't good. But I managed. I asked my friends in Norway if they could sort of search on Google on internet and see what they could find, and then they just told me I had to switch it off. So I went into the menu, switched off this sub receiver, and everything was okay. Yeah, the Mosley beam driven element broke, changed it. That can be a severe failure if you don't have a backup or spare part. Also had a hose clamp broke on the aluminum mass, and that was also a severe failure because then the beam, I had to lower the beam and the SWR went up, and the beam would not be fixed. It would just rotate with the wind. So that was a dangerous fault, but I managed. I had a spare clamp with me. The spider pole fell down. The beverage was taken by ghosts and children and so on. I also had some RFI in the shacks, but I always bring with me ferrites. I did have QRM, but the QRM eliminator helped me in that sense. Just a few more slides. I used to say I go on field day in Africa because it's really what it is. You do some planning, you take all the equipment with you, and you go down there, but you have really no clue actually how it will be before you actually arrive. And people expect you to set up a superstation in 1 hour, while they spend many years improving the home station. But you have to do the best you can, and this is just a regular operating style during the trips I have to Africa. Not much sleeping, three hours sleeping from 7 to 10. Then there is maintenance. You have to fix something. You have to do inspection, lunch, DXing. At this trip, it was just bad cons. Yeah, a lot of time spent with bad cons. There was good conditions on 40 meter to Asia. Always looked forward to this to the darkness and the nighttime. Had some really good pileups going to Asia. Always before the sunset, I would have a inspection of the antenna system together with the armor guard just to check that everything was okay before sunset. Because after sunset, I would be very concerned about leaving the hotel property. So I used to do this inspection during daytime. Try to put some effort into working W6, W6, 7. It's a lot more fun to work the West Coast than working just another European QSO. Yeah, so a regular operating day of operating here. 20 meter North America wasn't good at all. It was really bad conditions to 20 meter. I don't think there was any opening at all. I used to check it, but it was of course very frustrating not to have an opening. During the night, you try to stay awake even if you're very tired. You know, if you go to sleep, you will not wake up. That's the problem. And my favorite time of the day was the after sunrise, 6 to 7, working North America on 40 meter. That was just my favorite moment of this trip. I had a sort of also I noticed that during the pileup, you know, in the call for North America, and there's just a lot of European stations calling on top of the North American, and it just makes it so difficult to work the weaker station. So after a while, I just started to write down those stations that were not compliant with the DX code of conduct rules. You know, some rules says I will not transmit when DX operator calls another call sign, not mine. I will not transmit when the DX operator queries a call sign not like mine. There are a lot of these rules. I also logged those in violation with I will not transmit when the DX station requests geographic areas other than mine. So it was just for fun. I just started to write down a call sign. When I calling in North America, I just wrote down all the European call signs. And during this day, I wrote down 266 call signs violating those rules. Was about 5% of the unique number of stations calls. And being a DX operator is so frustrating. You try to work those weak stations, but there's always a strong station just on top of the station you try to work, and making it so difficult and frustrating. But again, it was just for fun. On this trip, you can see the countries that contributed to this for me: QRM, Italy, Russian station, German, Ukrainian, Spain, French, and so on. I did not write those violating, I will listen and listen again before calling. I will only call if I can copy the dig station properly. I will call and then listen for reasonable interval. I will not call continuously. A lot of operators, they just call and call their call sign, making it difficult to complete the QSO. Yeah, it was just for fun. Those stations that violated those rules, they did not get an instant LOTW upload. So all the stations except those got a LOTW upload. And of course, a lot of operators, they were quite angry and they blamed me for being a bad DX operator. But a lot of people, they also excused themselves and apologized for this. And all those who made an apology, they received this LOTW fast. It was just an experiment. I did just a few statistics, some new bands, not that many new DXs, about 20%. Also did a quick humanitarian fundraiser for children in Africa. So I collected donations from individuals, OQRS, also QSL manager, Charles gave some money. And in the end, we were able to give $6,200 to these Norwegian organizations. And they told me this was actually sufficient for 40 children to get education for 1 year. And when they go to school, they also get a meal every day. And that was really nice to hear. The final slide, the sponsors like to thank all those who donated to this project and also the humanitarian fundraisers. They are always very kind. They give me some money and that is very much appreciated. Always been supported by the North American clubs and foundations, and that's really nice and really I appreciate this. So with this, I would like to just thank you for listening and yeah, 7 trees.